Mark chimes in, the Packers are not as close to being a Super Bowl contender as some think. With an understanding performing wide receiver, I think he meant I think this is probably a voice text, with an underwhelming performance at wide receiver, defensive line, and losing their best corner, I think they take a step back from being close to the top teams. Filling one of those deficiencies isn't the end of all of the problems to make them the contender we want. Don, we got to stop using Jordan Love's first season as a reference point. It's what I call the rookie pass. The second season, a realistic gauge of where the Packers are. They need a deeper O-line, dependable receiver, stouter defensive line, cornerback. Again, these are all things
they're listing a lot of things.
We're all pointing these out, and these are things that, like, when you look at the Super Bowl teams, they have these. And the snap of the finger is not going to bring all of these holes to the Green Bay Packers like that.
And my concern is, again, I just said it, but to reiterate, there is talent, and that is 𝙆𝙍's mindset, right? I'm going to get young. I'm going to draft for need, which is the Packer way, right? Draft and develop, maybe do some free agency to plug some holes, but the idea is draft and develop. In today's NFL, you know pretty quickly, you know within the first couple of years if a guy is a stud or not. A difference between a non-starter, a starter, and a dude, as we were talking about.
Dudes.
Super Bowl teams have dudes at every level, and my concern is we can't just sit back and say, D-line needs to take a step forward. Wide receivers need to take a step forward. Cornerbacks need to step forward. Every single NFL franchise says that. We said that every year in Carolina, every year in Jacksonville, and even though those were good runs, when I was on those teams, you wouldn't consider those championship franchises. So you can't rely on we need guys to take a step forward. Everybody needs to take a step forward across the entire NFL.
I don't know. It just seems like you guys are talking as if this isn't a playoff team. This isn't an 11-win football team.
No one said they weren't a playoff team. There's a difference between a playoff team and somebody who can win a Super Bowl.
You guys it just seems like everybody is saying, or you two are really just saying that this football team cannot take the next step.
What about the Texers?
And some of the Texers, yes. And so what I think about is the fact that in a game where Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions, the Green Bay Packers fumbled on the first time they touched the football. They were still at a point where they were only down 6 points. Now, again, the game, I didn't like the way the game flow was. The offense was not the way it needed to be. You had a lot of injuries. I understand there's a lot of things that worked against the Packers, but the fact that the Packers still in that game shows me that they are not a championship-level team, but they can compete against championship football teams. The gap is there, but it's not as large as y'all are making it seem like. If the Packers can find a healthy corner to play week in and week out, something that 𝘍𝙎 hasn't been, if they can find somebody that can rush the passer and make a big play, that makes them that much better. I'm telling y'all this right now.
But I hear you, but you just said find somebody to play corner more than 𝘍𝙎. The difference being is finding a corner to play or finding a corner to be as good as 𝘍𝙎 is when he is playing is the difference. And then you say finding a pass rusher. Where are you going to find a pass rusher based off the way the Packers have done business that they're going to come in here and change the entire defensive landscape?
They brought in a Preston Smith. They brought in a Zadarius Smith years ago.
That didn't bring them a championship. But it helped.
It's still made the team better. That's what I'm saying.
So all I'm asking is,
I can't guarantee you a championship, but I can guarantee you that 𝙆𝙍 is going to make some type of move this offseason that's going to make this team better and closer to a title. You don't know how things are going to shake out whatsoever. Look at this Philadelphia Eagle team last year. They started off 10-1, and then all of a sudden they bombed out.
Did you also know the year before that they went to the Super Bowl?
Great. That's fantastic.
So they went Super Bowl down near Super Bowl. So I'm going to give them a pass. The Packers have been to the Super Bowl since 2010. And by the way, as this question comes in about the Eagles, Travis in 800-990-3776 in the Carbos Talking text line, would you say they are in a different position than the Eagles last year? Abso-freaking-lutely. Because A, they went to the Super Bowl the year before. Last year they started hot, had issues, but then they come back again and they have tons of talent that didn't take 8 years to develop into stars. Yeah, they're not going to have to make decisions on who to sign and excuse me. They're going to have tough decisions to make, which is a good problem to have when you're drafting guys in 4 years. You're going to figure out who you can keep and who you can't keep. That is the sign of a good general manager through the draft. They're not going to be like, ooh, Quinion Mitchell, we should just get rid of him. No, he was a stud this year. Cooper DeJean also got him. Jalen Carter 2 years ago fell into his lap, but they have him. But you get my point. They know they have guys.
Here's my thing. With 𝙆𝙍, because you're right. I mean, 𝙆𝙍 needs to find a solution for D-line, cornerback. You love to find a number one pass catcher. You love to bolster the offensive line. There's a lot of holes that need to get filled for the Packers, right? Here's my concern about 𝙆𝙍. We talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They have Howie Roseman as their GM, one of the best GMs in the NFL. You know what he does to build the roster? Everything. He has blockbuster trades to get like A.J. Brown. He has no problem getting big-ticket free agents like Saquon Barkley. He drafts unbelievably, even if it means like, okay, maybe questionable character issues. We're going to go because we
championship solves all that.
Championship solves all that. So whether it be drafting, free agency, trades, let's sign an old guy and bring him in for a year. I still think what the Commanders did. Remember sitting right here, we were watching the ESPN bottom line. We were thinking, hey, Bobby Wagner would still be a nice addition to the Green Bay Packers. You know who signed him?
The Commanders did.
The Commanders signed him for 1 year, $5 million, and he's their starting D-line. My concern is Goody doesn't use everything in his capability to build a championship team, unlike the Eagles. He doesn't do blockbuster trades. He doesn't do big-time free agents. He doesn't, sometimes he did last year, and he doesn't do old vets to come in for a 1 year cheap deal. But if you don't do those things, how can you possibly compete if you only go young and you only primarily draft?
Ricardo in Canada, you are the Packer backer of all of that great nation to the north. I don't even know if it's a great nation. Let's hear your optimistic point of view today.
Okay, if you guys will indulge me for a quick moment. The Philadelphia yesterday's was a prime example on how important coordinators and a game plan is. The Commanders went into that game thinking that the Eagles were not going to run Barkley until the wheels fall off. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I counted 6 guys in the box at certain times. I don't know what they were thinking. The game plan against Philadelphia is easy. You got to make Jalen Hurts win the game. He may win, he may not, but that's the game plan. You load the box. This should all show an appreciation to how good our defense played without having the top-end talent like everyone thinks, like all the other teams. Our defense held their own against the Eagles and their ground game for 3.5 quarters, until eventually the offense finally gave up. And on the other side, the Kansas City Chiefs are the perfect example of what a coordinator can do for a defense. When the game was on the line, the Buffalo Bills played man-to-man without pressure and let Mahomes get the first down. When the game was on the line, Spagnuolo sent everybody after the quarterback, and look at the difference. That is the difference right there. Coaching and game plan. Don't give me this nonsense about we don't have top end. We have talent on offense and on defense. The Flynn was off his rocker this year. He did not know how to match Jacobs to the play action game. Look at Andy Reid. He needs to figure that out. If he can't do it himself, he needs to have that self-awareness to give him an outside source to give him some ideas. But don't give me this.
Sorry, Ricardo, we started losing you there. You also started going really fast because you're fired up, which I love.
Ricardo is right. Coordinators are a massive, massive advantage when they do it well, smart, timing, and game plan. My takeaway from that is I feel further away because do we think that – so Matt LaFleur and Jeff Hafley, right? Those are the guys that are calling the plays and setting things up, right? Yep. I would consider them both knocking on the door of elite, somewhere in the good to very good category. But when you are playing against these top teams, it's Spagnuolo, it's Andy Reid. I mean, it's guys. These guys are like the top, the best coordinator.
Matt LaFleur needs to be an elite play caller.
Again, so like we have good to very good players.
Postseason.
You have good to very good players, and you have good to very good coaches. These players, they have elite talent and elite coaches. So if anything, I feel further away after that call from Ricardo.
Yeah, I disagree. I just feel like you guys are sitting here and taking – obviously this team did not perform up to what our expectations are, but at this point I think you guys aren't giving them enough credit for thinking that they can improve and get better.
We're looking at holistically coaches, players, culture, history.
You're writing an organization off like the Green Bay Packers, and granted, we haven't won a Super Bowl in a long time.
Kind of a big deal. Haven't even been to one since 2010.
It is a big deal, but we have some pieces on this roster that are coming back next year that can contribute to a football team that has championship aspirations. Do not write this team off yet. Now, when we get to the draft, April 26th, 26th, 25th, whenever that is, if we get to the draft and we say, oh, it was a bad offseason, and Goody drafts a defensive lineman or some project, right? Some guy who didn't have big stats in college or didn't start at all in college or only started his senior year, right? A lot of potential. Then we can have this conversation of being angry and upset and having doubts. But right now is not the time to have doubts about what the Green Bay Packers can do. Because a year ago at this time, you all were saying, boy, this team, they're almost there. They're almost there, and they still have a lot of those same guys on the team who will be a year older. So I still believe that this football team is getting closer and closer.
Over the KBN Sports Desk with the Alex Strofe.
Bad news for Brad Nortman's campaign to become the special teams coordinator of the Packers. Rich Bisaccia.
Yeah, I said that when you weren't listening. He was extended.
That's brutal.
It's
A shocking hire. A shocking extension.
That's how we got to the conversation, by the way.
I might have been on the phone.
Yeah, it was like Bisaccia got extended. Brad, you're giving all your tricks away. We could have used you instead of you could probably be 32nd special teams, just like Bisaccia.
Want to be our defensive line coach? It's only one of those.
Nah,
I don't. They would get worse. They would regress
You think?
under me.
Yeah. Look at Mr. Tough Guy and his Prairie Saint-Germain.
But you had that was good, Benny. You had a couple sacks in high school.
He was a
A
linebacker.
couple sacks under my name. I just kind of used brute strength and speed, though.
I've already uninspired if I'm the Packers defensive line.
All right, guys, come
Rashawn.
on. You just got to work a little bit harder, guys.
All right.
Come on, use your hands, boys. Use your hands. Very good footwork. I'd be too positive.
Oh, my
Rashawn
gosh.
will regress.
More.
Yeah, I know, right?
Not good. All right, so part of the conversation the last 30 minutes has been a little bit of frustration identifying problems. Now, who's the asshole if you just bring up all the problems without a solution? The problem is I just don't feel like there's going to be enough action. There'll be action, but when that action's done, I just don't want to go in the same cycle of convincing ourselves that the action was enough. And then we get to this point in the season again next year, and we look back and be like, oh, well, now we need this. I just don't want to be this vicious cycle. And it feels like the last 6 years, the last 7 years. They went to NFC Championship games, Kyle.
It's still been a vicious cycle of being one man away.
That's what I'm saying. And so looking at it as like, how do you eventually get yourself away from this one man away thing? So you know what? It's wish list time. Goody's probably not going to listen to me, but I'm going to give some of my believe in my heart of hearts that this Packer team needs to do in order to win a championship.
Now, a look at Ben Brust's off-season wish list. Wish number 1.
I like those sparkles. Gets me in a good mood. We're going to spin the block. We've talked about it. It's time to spin the block. Bring back Devante Adams. He is flirting. He is leaving breadcrumbs everywhere. He talks about Jaden Daniels, and he brings it right back to Jordan Love. Oh, he reminds me of Love, cool, calm, collected. He's in puppy love. He's past the past. He doesn't care about what you did in the moment, about what you offered him and why he went to Vegas. Because you know why? He went to Vegas, he went to the Jets, and he went to 2 loser franchises. So now you look at Devante, who was uber productive at the end of last year with Rodgers. Great, that's Rodgers. They have a connection. That's fine. I see a lot of pop in Devante. You need a veteran in the locker room, and you need a wide receiver. He can accomplish both for you. He knows the offense. You don't need to be like, hey, sure there's some stuff that they'll install and put in that's different, but he's been in the system. He's worked with LaFleur. What is the one thing that was very alarming from the spring and summer? We were all excited about the growth of the wide receivers. And then Jordan Love said, we just got to win some of these one-on-one matchups. Who is the best separator in the NFL? Devante Adams. In no particular order of this wish list, bringing back Tay is on the list. I think you can make it work because he's at the end of his career. And if you get a hungry championship vet who's willing to set aside, he's made his money. He went and got his money. That's why he wasn't with the Packers. I think he realizes that his best chance is to go somewhere familiar where he can have an impact and help the team and leave a legacy for the franchise. Tay on the wish list for Ben Brust.
Go get yourself a cougar.
Oh, I love this wish list. I love it. I mean,
thoughts, boys? Strofe, Kyle, Brad, anybody?
To me, Tay checks all the boxes. Mm-hmm. Steady, present vet. He's a guy that knows how to go from, sort of a receiver that needs to develop.
Wanting to get cut by Packer fans because he's dropping passes to being one of the best of all time at the position.
It's so easy to remember how much he struggled early in his career, but he worked his way through it, and he knows what it takes to go from mid to elite. That's what these guys need to go to, and they're starting off better than that, generally speaking, so he can help the young guys. He can be your bona fide number 1. He knows the offense, one-on-one matchups. Jordan Love needs a security blanket. Every great quarterback has a security blanket. Jordan Love doesn't have one. Give him Tay. This one seems like such a layup that, I mean, Goody has no reason not to do this. It's such a layup, though, that I doubt he does.
Yeah.
It'd be too easy for Goody.
No, I don't think the Packers have a 1,000-yard receiver since Tay left. right?
wild.
And so for Devante Adams to come back, this is something that I agree, Ben. Spinning the block on this one is something you definitely should do. It's not always smart to spin the block, but when you can spin the block and get somebody like
timing
Devante Adams,
here is why it makes sense.
No, this is a perfect time because at the point, like you said, in his career where he's actually angling to come back to Green Bay, that's what he's doing. He obviously want to get his money, a little bit of money too, but he's saying like, hey, I'm open to potentially coming back to Green Bay. If you want to capitalize on this first window Brad talks about for Jordan Love, get a guy that can go out there and still get you 1,000 yards. Get a guy that can go out there and be a number one wide receiver. You saw what A.J. Brown was able to do yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles. Find yourself somebody that can be that safety blanket, as you mentioned, but also somebody who can be a veteran leader presence that can help the rest of the receivers grow and learn how to be professionals.
Think about what this would mean for all the rest of the receivers too, right? You look at the coverage will tilt to Devante Adams. That's just going to open up windows for, Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Dobbs, Tucker Kraft. Like, when your focus is Tay, everybody else benefits from it.
Just to recap,
Wish number 1.
spin the block with Devante. Bring in the vet. Bring in the guy who can still play. And I just can't wait to see Goody and Devante come together to help this team with a veteran who can produce, who knows the offense, and just, again, it just makes too much sense. He's one of the best separators in the league. He can open up so much for this team.
Do we actually think
Devante
this can
Adams?
happen? Do you think he'll actually think about this?
I actually believe there's a possibility, yes, because they have money, and as long as Devante is saying, all right, like if he does the play the cap game with Goody and Russ Ball, of like, hey, front end me, bonus me, whatever. I'm not looking for a huge salary, but use some of that for a guy that can make an impact with your young wide receivers while you're figuring out who's going to be one of those wide receivers for you long term, if there's any of them.
The only thing, there's a couple of things that can get in the way. I think it'll happen too, but both Goody and Tay need to approach it with some humility. Like, they both need to humble themselves. Goody needs to say, look, Tay, I messed up. Never wanted to let you go. You're the best.
Never want to
I
give
love
you up.
And Tay needs to say, you know what? I know I could probably get more money elsewhere, but I value a good pass thrower and an organization that wants to win, and darn it, I love Green Bay. Both need to be humble in this. If that's the case.
Brad Nortman, you played in Super Bowl 50. You have a recipe in which you believe that all Super Bowl teams have, and you're going to share with us what that recipe is. We're going to figure out how close the Packers are to a Super Bowl based off the Brad Nortman recipe of at least getting there, because that's all he did.